Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Institute for Personal Development, where total consciousness is the new frontier. Kriya Yoga is the union of the individual with the divine. Join us as we explore the practices that initiate this process.
Good morning. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. Let's talk consciousness. I am your hostess, Lisa Winton, and with me is Kenny Toy, also known as Swami Jayananda, founder of Institute for Personal Development, located here in Hampton, New Hampshire. Good morning, Swami. Thank you for being here today. How are you this morning?
I'm doing pretty good this morning. How about you?
I'm doing wonderful on this chilly moon day. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Today on The Voice of Yoga, we'll be talking about the concept of a multidimensional reality system. Things are happening on different levels simultaneously, and attuning yourself to all the levels gives you options and access to resources. Listen in as we explain the difference between a need and a want and how to prioritize your needs in order of importance. We'll talk about how to use your Kriya Yoga practice to connect you to the life force and experience the benefit of Prana Power. Join the Kriya Yoga Spiritual Advance to get the light in your soul and feel connected to something pure, powerful, and sacred. So, Swami, I think it's interesting that we use the word investing in the title of the show, and it made me think about when we invest, whether we invest money in a stock market or something like that, or we are spending time on a project or investing time. So we're putting something tangible, or, well, I guess time would be tangible. We're putting something tangible into a product or whatever, and we're expecting some type of a return. So how do we apply that to Kriya Yoga?
Yeah, I think the whole thing of putting your effort into something, and like you say, it's all cause and effect. It's all expectation and return. And one of the things that we find is that a lot of us are having problems in our lives because we're not getting what we expect. And so that produces kind of like a disappointment. Now, when you understand, I want to say the simplicity of Kriya Yoga, you understand the genius of Kriya Yoga, is that what we're basically trying to do is we're trying to attune ourselves with something that is really important, that's typically has always been there for us. But we're not recognizing it. We're not reveling in the availability of this very precious resource. Our bodies are more in search for something a little bit more tangible. And so it kind of produces this failure force in our lives. And one of the things that you start to understand is that it's not this kind of war between good and evil as much as it is just simple physics. It's trying to ask something to do something that it's not capable of doing. Kind of like what we always say, you can put water in your car and maybe save some money, but then, of course, your car doesn't run on water. So what exactly have you done? And so with regard to this whole thing of investing in a resource-based economy, it's really important that as you start to build your reality and you start to establish your sense of self, that you want to do it with the resources that are really important to you as opposed to the things that aren't really all that important. And then, of course, like, well, what does that do? Because they're different resources, they have different returns. They do different things. And so when you become connected to this life force, this indivisible, unified field, and you're using it as the symbol that your body receives for validation, then matter and mind have now come together with new information. And so there are some changes that do take place.
So how do we go from what you talk about, a resource-based economy, where we want to connect to the prana, the life force, and still maintain the lives that we have in this third-dimensional reality? I mean, we have to still make money, we still have to do all these things. So how do we create that balance?
Well, first thing you have to understand is that you don't have to go live in a cave in order to connect to the life force. That's the first order of business. I mean, it's a simple mental adjustment. You have to start changing how you think is where it starts. One of the questions that we usually always begin most of our sessions with is, what would matter if your next breath wasn't there waiting for you? Now, the key to this is why am I not celebrating something that I could only live a couple of minutes without? Because if your next breath isn't there, you only have a couple of minutes to live. Mm-hmm. But most of us, our bodies are in search of something that is way less important usually. Because like you say, this is important, this is about money. Well, I know people that have lived an entire lifetime without money. I don't know anybody who's lived more than a couple of minutes without air. And yet, we think that it's like such this big sacrifice that we have to make on some level. And to me, I mean, it's just a simple internal mental adjustment. It's changing how you think. It's understanding the difference between a need and a want. And then start using what you need to produce the feeling that you're okay. Mm-hmm. And that's where the concept of religion, the concept of yoga comes in, because one of the things you learn is that it's not just an academic accomplishment. The rhetorical question, what would matter if your next breath wasn't there, is relatively meaningless to somebody whose body is longing for something visible and tangible, for validation. We literally have to change these patterns in our bodies. We have to change the reward circuits in our brains so that now we revel in the availability of what we need. But that doesn't disconnect you from the physical world. It enables you to move freely through the physical world and never really draw off of it. Your exchange of energy with your external environment is actually different. You're in a position of strength. You're in a position of giving as opposed to needing something to be a particular way. So it definitely is an advantage on a lot of different levels. And it's a matter of just understanding, well, what is it that I'm trying to do? Use what you need to produce the feeling that you're happy. Mm-hmm. And, well, of course, then that's met with, well, everybody has their needs. We all have needs. All right? But in this model, we don't all have different needs. It's very generic. What makes something a need is that if you don't get it, you die. Mm-hmm. And, of course, what makes something important is how long can I live without it?
So that's much different than somebody wanting something else, because, like you said, need is something that we need to survive. Food, air, prana, water, that type of thing. Wanting is just, if he doesn't call me, my day is shot. If I don't make that sale, my job is in jeopardy. All those things are just wants, and they're just illusions to keeping us away from the life force.
Right, and it's all patterning. It's all conditioning. I mean, you can internalize anything that your body will respond as if it's in danger if it doesn't have it. I mean, the thing that I think is classic is cigarettes. A cigarette smoker actually, on some deep psychological level, thinks they need a cigarette. And analytically, I mean, nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, there isn't anything redeeming about cigarette smoking. I mean, it's probably one of the most toxic things that you could do. It's one of the things that's probably most detrimental to your well-being, and yet on this deep psychological level, I need a cigarette. An alcoholic needs a drink. You know, a drug addict needs a fix. And so what's driving this is the forces of preservation and survival coming from our physical bodies. And the secret to life is to basically reprogram your body to use what it really does need to produce the same feeling in the body that I'm happy, I'm special, I'm good enough. Because when we do that, that's when we get this conversion. That's when we've shifted from a human that is drawing from things that are visible and tangible to now a human that is drawing from things that are invisible and intangible.
So it's trying to get ourselves to recognize the fact that, is this a need or a want? That might be the hardest thing for some people, because I don't know if most people really understand the difference between those two words. Because sometimes I think their wants coincide with their needs. Like I want to make this sale because I need to make money so I can buy food and all these things. So we're back into that Maslow's theory, that hierarchy of, you know, we need food, shelter, clothing before we move on to the next need of our survival.
Yeah, and I think the whole Maslow thing, you know, has to be updated, because food isn't your number one life-sustaining force. So if you just break it down a little bit further, that there are resources that are more important to our existence, and you started to place them in their position of importance, you would start to change your values. You would start to change how you think, which in turn would make it a little bit easier for you to internalize something that is invisible and intangible, because it's really important to your existence. And just like you said a couple of weeks ago, that whole thing of put your head underwater. If you want to know how important your air is, put your head underwater. And then see just how long you last. And then when you finally come up and take that breath, it might have new meaning for you. And then, of course, if you can start to change your thoughts, change your reward circuits in your brain, then now you look at just look at what you did for yourself. Mm-hmm. If every time you take a breath, it reinforces a feeling in your body that you're happy, you're special, you're good enough. Now, whether you're breathing consciously or you're breathing unconsciously, you're continuously reinforcing this feeling that I'm happy. That would be pretty stupid, right? Wouldn't you be better off assigning that same feeling to something that's illegal, toxic, poisonous, and expensive?
You do make it sound so simple and so easy, yet it's something that, 99% of the world's population, what we struggle with. So my question to you is, so there must be, I didn't realize what time it was. So what I think we're going to do is we're going to pause. I'll come back and I'll ask you that question when we return from hearing a word from our sponsors. So listeners, also at that time, if you have any questions for Swami, I'll open up the phone lines at that time. We'll be back in a few moments.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate.
If you are looking for a Samadhi-based experience, IPD Kriya Yoga has the goods. A complete yoga program that includes the practices and the process. Kriya Yoga Series 1 live classes and videos. Get your arms around the spiritual science of Kriya Yoga.
You know, the intention of why we practice is to embody the spirit, to feel connected to the life force.
Kriya Yoga Asana live classes and videos. A cosmically engineered system of exercises to initiate apotheosis. A system of exercises engineered for dining and dancing at the Cosmic Ballroom. Kriya Yoga Series 2 live classes and videos. A practice in open forum designed to facilitate positive growth of consciousness. Get your Labyrinth video.
I find the positive side of it is it pulls a lot of things together.
Kriya Yoga Mantra and Meditation. With repetition comes absorption. Pray on prana and become divine.
At the same time, we all have a unique talent and gift to give back to the universe.
Private sessions. The mysteries of the universe have always been handed down verbally from teacher to student. Call or click now and get started. 603-929-0303 or www.ipdtransform.com. Namaste.
Purnamariya Purnameva Vashishate.
Welcome back. For those of you just joining us, you're listening to The Voice of Yoga, and we are talking consciousness. So at this time, what I would like to do, we do have a few listeners out there. If you have any questions for Swami, you can just state your questions right now. We're listening. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and continue with the question that I had before the break. And that question is, I know we have to understand between the need and the want. Now, is it good practice to, like if we have to go to work and we have to, make our sales, do we approach what we do for a living with the sense of, it's okay if I don't make the sale, not having this, not having an attachment to the results. I've read previously that once you start, attaching your outcome of your efforts, that actually can take you away from your final goal. So how do we apply what you just told us in the first half of the show to maybe having a more of a spiritual endeavor in what we do for a living?
Well, I think what happens is that when you do have internal support and you have the benefit of the calmness, the confidence, and the clarity that comes with it, and you have a clear understanding that there is a difference between a need and a want, then you can undertake a task in the physical world, say, for example, like a job, even, say, for example, a high-pressure job, that you don't negate what's going on in the outside world, but you really kind of make it smaller. And I think just like what you said, if you amp up a want to the position of importance of a need, then, of course, everything becomes emotionally charged and your inner environment becomes turbulent. Whereas if you can stay connected to the life force, you're connected to your creativity, your imagination, endless possibilities. So you're always kind of in a position where you can create new ideas. You can actually, I want to say, make more intelligent decisions about things. You perform better without all the fear. without all the emotionality, without being reactive and controlled by the situation. You're clearer and calmer. And then, of course, you're able to perform oftentimes, based on how you have been trained to perform, as opposed to, I need to make the sale. Whatever it is that I have to do to make this sale, that's way more emotional than being able to tailor your response to the particular circumstance or situation. But again, internal support allows us objectivity, that you're more detached from the outcome. And one of the things is that, if I don't make this one, there's another one right behind it.
Well, I think that's the hardest thing for us to do when we do have jobs that we have to do, is that we do have to learn to detach ourselves from the results of any given, whatever it is that we do, whether it's a high-pressure job, you didn't get the contract, or you didn't make the sale or anything like that. I think that's the hardest part, is for us to remember, if I don't make the sale, I'm not going to die. It's not. We have to put it in perspective. I think even you have used words like that. You're not going to die. You're still of this world, and even I have said at times, you know what? And even if I did have to meet my Maker, is that really such a horrible thing? I'm becoming one with the universe again. So it's really kind of putting everything in perspective.
Yeah, and I think you take all the unnecessary fear out of it. And just like what you said, just to have a healthy perspective of your transition, that death isn't a catastrophe which must be avoided at all cost. That you just develop, like I said, different values which produce different feelings in your body, so that you're just more, you're better equipped to deal with real life circumstances and situations. And like you say, I was looking for a job when I found this one. What's the worst possible scenario? Is I lose my job. I'm not going to die. And so the other thing that I think that also happens is that you don't become Pollyanna either. You don't become senselessly optimistic, or even in some respects flat out stupid. It's not a release and let God kind of a thing. It's I've got calmness, I've got clarity, I've got confidence, and so I've got tools. And so you're constantly using your connection to help you manufacture a really productive, healthy, successful life. And you're doing it deliberately, consciously, and willfully, which is very different than, like I said, just kind of letting God do everything for me. That I have this thing called the mind, and I have this thing called creativity or imagination. And so constantly using your mental functions and the benefit of the internal connection kind of fuels that mental state of being.
Yeah, I like how you said that. It reminds me of a saying I heard many, many, many years ago. I was in the car business. I was a car salesman actually for a couple of months, and I remember my general manager saying to me, he actually tore out some pages out of the yellow page and said, here, you have to call these contractors and tell them we have some plows for sale for the truck. So an activity creates business, Lisa, so make sure you keep calling until the next person walks in the door. I'm like, okay. But I always remembered that activity creates business. So, and I've used that phrase to apply to just about everything, like you were saying earlier, changing how you think. So when we work towards changing how we think and doing all these things, to me that's like activity. So activity creates business, or activity creates results. I don't know, do you think I'm on the right track, or can we apply that to Kriya Yoga?
No, I think so, because it's all about motion, and a body in motion requires a whole lot less energy to keep in motion than a body at rest requires to put in motion. So anytime you get something up and running, you want to try and keep momentum. And hopefully, you're able to do it in a way that you start to progress. But sometimes just, keep bumping it. Just keep doing something. And not the insanity thing. Don't keep doing the same thing, but change things a little bit until eventually you start to get this momentum. And then the whole thing will, you'll have that element of combustion, and then you may start to actually get better results.
So to the person that's maybe listening to our program for the first time, you talked about, using Kriya Yoga to connect to the life force, and the first thing they have to do is change how they think. So what would be the next best thing? How would you summarize the next best thing for them to do to take advantage of our topic today, investing in a resource-based economy?
Well, apart from maybe signing up for classes here, the next most important thing would be to work on your breathing, because there's a direct relationship between life-sustaining force number 1, thought, and life-sustaining force number 2, breath. That your rate of breath equals your rate of thought. And then, of course, the whole concept of bad habits set up limitation. Like if we don't think right, if we don't breathe right, if we're not hydrated, if the foods we eat produce cravings and disturbances. These are all variables that will affect the outcome of what it is that you're trying to do. Because remember, you're trying to attune yourself to something that's invisible and intangible.
Well, it's almost about that time. We had to start closing down our program for today. So, listeners, I would invite you to visit our website. You can follow us on Pinterest and Twitter and Facebook, of course. And also available are the online classes you can access through the website, www.ipdtransform.com. Just click on the link for the online classes. It should direct you right to Powwow, and you can make your selection from there. But keep those comments, questions, curiosities coming, because we do enjoy hearing from you. And be sure to tune in to our next program. We will not have a radio show next Monday, as we'll be out of the country, but the following Monday after that, I believe we might be talking about All Souls Day. I'm not really quite sure, but it might be our topic of discussion then. So, Swami, we've got maybe another 30 seconds or so. Any final thoughts or comments about our discussion today?
Well, I would like to invite people to join us and share in our classes and programs, and also, just start using what you really do need to produce the feeling in your body that you're happy. Make breath your party. Make breath your beloved. Make breath your new drug of choice, and see what starts to happen. That this concept of happiness will change from just insatiable cravings to this continuous glow of bliss, wonder, and awe, which is kind of what I would kind of say would be more in sync with what you might want to expect with a resource-based economy. And with that, I wish everybody a good day. Namaste.
Thank you. You do make it sound so simple. And thank you for tuning in to The Voice of Yoga. I'm Lisa Winton, along with Swami Jayananda, signing off. Have a wonderful Kriya Yoga kind of day. Namaste.